Are you being serious right now?
Yeah,
You'd let me interview you as Superman.
sure.
Ready?
Let's do it, Cronkite.
Superman.
Miss Lane.
Recently, you've come under a lot of fire for
I
what
know,
some
it's a
might.
lot of
it's
fire,
it's
but-
a lot.
Hello and welcome. It's the summer of Superman, and we are celebrating with not one but two very special interviews with the composers of this summer's biggest blockbuster. Yes, that's right. The DC Comics superhero is back in a big way on the big screen. And we will be celebrating here on this very show with two special shows for you back to back, starting with this very episode. Sean Wilson and I were very, very excited to catch up with our dear friend, composer John Murphy, who, of course, has done many great works, including Sunshine, 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later, Kick-Ass, and many, many more great scores. He was reunited with his dear friend James Gunn, this time to score the sound of Superman. Sean Wilson and I caught up with John to find out more.
Hey, buddy. Eyes up here.
Your choices, your actions. That's what makes you who you are.
And Sean and I are we're always excited to speak to this guy, right? We are so happy and so privileged that he is on this show fairly regularly. It's very nice to say, and always doing epic scores. I think the last, actually, it's been a minute, I think, since we caught up, maybe Guardians 3, I want to say. It must be. But please welcome to the show, the incredible Mr. John Murphy. How are you, sir?
I'm good, thank you. And thank you for having me again. It's always good to see you guys.
Well, thank you so much for coming back each time. We haven't scared you away, which is always a good thing. So I want to walk it back to maybe a year or two ago when you were allowed to start talking about things that you were up to, and Mr. James Gunn gave you permission to do so. And you, I think some things came out on the internet, and then you came to me and you said, "Guess what I'm doing next?" And I'm incredibly excited for you. I know we talked about before about what this legacy has on. I think everybody I've come into contact with this week has had a Superman story that they've told in some way, shape, or form, and how it's affected our lives in some way. How this movie's affected, the music's affected your career, and so on and so forth. So, let's get into that. Let's get into the jumping off point. On the day you found out you were doing Superman, how did you feel? What were your responses? Share that with the world, please.
It was obviously it was a huge moment for me because I'd done 3 things with James up to that point, and obviously I knew he was doing Superman, and it was funny because I'd kind of gone, well, if it was me, I'd get John Williams. I was directing this, I'd be like, oh, it's got to be John Williams because it's John Williams and it's one of the most iconic scores of all time. So I kind of, half had me little story to say to James when he rang and said, look, I've got to use John Williams here on him. I was going to say, oh, it's okay, I get it, But the call, and the call came and he said, let's do it. And so, you try and keep you cool. And, after we stopped talking, there was just that moment where you're going, oh my God, how did I end up in this, how did I get here, And then once I'd got myself together with that I was going to be doing Superman, then it was like, there was mention in the conversation quite early on that, that James was thinking about the using the original John Williams motif, you know, the theme. You know, it wasn't for certain, but you know, he talked about it, and you know, but you know, it was always his intention to reimagine it, not to just copy what was there before, but to see where we could take it. Let's experiment and see what we could do with it, you know. So as soon as I'd got my head together with that, I was doing, you know, I mean, just getting any call from James Gunn that you're doing a movie with him is a huge deal, you know. It's just a big deal. So that's exciting in itself. The fact that it was Superman just made it doubly so. And then the fact that I might be able to work with, you know, the original John Williams theme, you know, was mind-blowing, because it's kind of sacred, you know, as a composer. You know, there are maybe, you know, half a dozen themes in film music that you feel like, you know, it's like the Beatles tapes, you know, it's like you feel like you're handling something sacred. And that score was one of them. You know, it was groundbreaking. It changed everything. It's a almost perfect film score for me. So there was there was this whirlwind of emotions and excitement and fear. You know, it was a big day, you know, it was a big day. So, yeah.
Sean.
Yeah, very interesting when you compare it to the Beatles. I imagine it would be like someone approaching you going, right, Yesterday, we want you to interfere with Yesterday or Let It Be or something, right?
Well, no, it's, you know, some works of art are just so ingrained in the culture that they are part of the culture, you know. Certainly with Western music, and you don't have to be a film fan or anything fan to just not hear that opening motif and see Superman flying for the first time, you know. And I remember going to the movies to see it. I mean, my history with Superman goes all the way back to the comic books when I was 7 or 8. But you know, in terms of the music, you know, I just remember it vividly. And there's very few themes, maybe a dozen, that I remember the moment when I heard it for the first time. And I remember sitting there and it's just like, you know, it's work of genius. So yeah, to be able to work with it was just incredible.
How, in your opinion, as a composer, like that, John Williams' theme is a piece of classical music it's almost attained the reverence that a great pop track has. Like its reputation precedes it so much. Like how common do you think that is? Is that quite a rare thing, do you think?
It's very rare, you know. I mean, the obvious things that come to mind are, you know, the Godfather theme, you know, the Jaws theme, James Bond theme, you know.
Maybe a bit of Morricone, maybe the Morricone westerns, perhaps.
Exactly, the spaghetti western, you know, all that stuff, the Sergio Leone stuff. They're the heavy hitters, you know. They're the ones for me. You know, I've got my own personal favourites that a lot of people may not have heard of, like, you know, the Betty Blue theme blows me away. You know, so, but you know, in terms of having an effect, you know, on our culture, then without a doubt, you know, the Superman motif is up there. You know, it's right at the top.
How does that? So we talked a little moment ago about fear going into that, kind of carrying that weight on your shoulders. How are you feeling in terms of how you made your first steps towards writing the score? Was it become, like we talked about before, how, you know, it's trying to like paint the house while it's still being built, right? So do you then, are you just focused on the road ahead, or is it always conscious in your mind that you're working with that theme?
Well, what I was always conscious of was to be respectful, you know, not to go too crazy. I mean, you know, I did a lot of different versions to see where the theme could go. You know, there was a Doom version. There was, you know, a kind of indie acoustic version. You know, there was even a punk version at one point, you know. So we were just trying to see how far we could go and where it stopped becoming. And the funny thing was, no matter what I did with that theme, it still was the theme. It still had the same effect.
Still invincible.
Yeah, it was bulletproof. You know, and I slowed it down like half speed. I made it from a major into a minor. Didn't care. It was like, you know, hold my pint. Here we go. It was just invincible theme, you know. You couldn't, whatever you did, you know, you're breaking out the notes and taking. That's the true test of what I call a proper theme, you know. It just didn't care. No matter what I did, you know, it just was, it was the theme. So, you know, but yeah, you know, in terms of I think I've done it for so long now that I don't really worry. I always get nervous at the beginning of any project. You know, there's always that nervous excitement and that fear and imposter syndrome and all the usual stuff we all go through. But, you know, as soon as you get going, as soon as you get working, it just goes away because you know, to do the job properly, you've just got to lock in. You've got to focus so much. And you know, when that kicks in, then the fear just goes away. You know, it's like what footballers say when, you know, they're nervous before a big game. They get in the dressing room, the second they walk on, you know, they run onto the pitch, it's gone. So it's, you know, it's a bit like that, really. You know, it's okay to be nervous and it just keeps you on your toes at the beginning. But, you know, as soon as the work starts, you're too busy. You know, you're too busy to doubt yourself, you know? You just...
Sean.
That's what you were just saying there, John. I was rewatching the Bruce Botnick, Jerry Goldsmith documentary just a few hours ago, actually. And Jerry Goldsmith says words to the effect of "Don't be afraid of fear because it goes with the turf." It's like fear is not something to be afraid of. It can actually propel you to greater heights of creativity. Like, would you agree with that?
Yeah, completely. I mean, and he, you know, Jerry was, in my opinion, one of the greats in film music. I mean, you know, in certain parts of what he did, he was untouchable. You know, the complexity of the way he structured his scores. You know, Jerry was a genius. But yeah, it's you've sort of got to just embrace it. You know, you've just got to go, okay. It's, you know, it's natural to be nervous and to maybe not sleep the night before too well because you're thinking your brain's going a million miles an hour. And, you know, I think that's just natural. I think that's healthy, you know. Because, you know, the last thing you want is complacency. I mean, thank God I was never confident enough to breathe into any movie, you know. I was always like, oh my God. You know, I think of 5 other composers that would be better at doing a movie or something, you know. But it's good, you know, because complacency is the killer, you know. So I've never had that worry of being complacent. So yeah, fear's a good thing. I mean, in anything in life, you got to, you know, it's like that saying, everything you want is the other side of fear, you know. So you just go, okay, so I'm feeling that right now, but let's get going and it'll all be fine. It always works out.
Yeah.
There's some really great highlights in this score. There's a moment in particular which I think we won't spoil because there's still a lot of people that want to see the film. There is an emotionally pivotal moment in this film, I want to say in the third act, involving a flag and a guitar. And you're like, oh, exactly what I mean. Now, of course, the track everybody knows about because the track already came out, right? So we can talk about the track. We can play the track. But obviously the relevance and the importance to the story that it has is absolutely profound. That actually moved me incredibly. And I saw it again earlier and I was like, oh my, the scene is already so powerful, right? The way James shot it, the way it's done with the child and everything, it's already powerful. But there's something about you adding that guitar which just gave it that wallop, if you know what I mean, in terms of it just added more emotion to it. Tell us about that. And it's essentially the theme on guitar, but tell us more about it.
Oh my God. I don't know. I'm scared of bursting the bubble for everybody here, but it sort of almost didn't happen because how it came about, I'd been, you know, it was very, very early on in the process. We were at the stage of trying the you know, John's theme on different things and trying this and I was actually in the studio and I was about to record on something else and I just had the guitar with me. You know, so, and I'm waiting for Tyler, my producer. He was getting sounds together and headphone mixes. And, you know, when you know, you're sitting there holding a guitar and you've got to wait 5 minutes. You can't just not play it, you know, it's nervous. So, you know, I just started playing the John Williams theme, and it was really for a laugh. It was just to entertain myself, you know. And then I started playing it in the style of, you know, Hendrix, Star Spangled Banner, you know, and I was like, God, it's even good on that, you know. I was just kind of like in awe of like, how can such a simple motif be so perfect, you know, have a perfect beginning, middle, and end. And I was kind of just playing it, waiting to do what I was supposed to record, you know. But something just clicked to me, and I thought, so I couldn't, could I? You know, and I'm thinking, you know, do I just do a quick demo with this for James and just see, you know, or will I go to composer hell for even dare the audacity to play John Williams in the style of Hendrix through a Vox AC-15, you know? But, you know, and then I thought, you know what, it's James Gunn. If I'm ever going to get to do something like that, it'll be with James. So I just thought, then the next day we just did a version of it, you know, and it goes into the big orchestra and it goes into all the stuff. I was trying to hedge me bets, you know, so we did the guitar bit, and then I was trying to show James that it can go huge. We can seamlessly go from this motif into, and he loved it. And when the trailer came out, I had no idea what the music was. I just got sent it, and I was asked to re-record it with the orchestra because we had an orchestra session coming up. So I just thought I was just going to watch the trailer, see how they'd edited some of the score, reorchestrate it, and then go into Warner Brothers with the orchestra and do it all fancy. So when I watched it and it starts and then it's like this down, 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 I'm like, oh my God. I was literally like, oh, I was shocked, you know, and I was actually genuinely scared too, because I thought, oh my God, this is going to be the first sound that the world is going to hear of the forthcoming score. But when it got to the, you know, when it got to the big bit and I went into that, and I just, you know, I was just like so blown away with the trailer. And I just went, oh my God, they're going to love this, you know, the images and and I just thought, don't overthink it. If, you know, it's gone through the smartest guys at marketing and all these people, and James had signed off on it. And I thought, if they think it's going to work, then let's just run with it. And then we recorded the orchestra next week on it. So, you know, as an idea, it really wasn't. I'd love to say I'd thought it through, but it was just me jamming while I was waiting for Tyler to get ready to record. It was literally just me jamming around, and, you know, kind of John Williams meets Hendrix. But
And
some
then-
of the best things happen that way.
And then here we are, and this really important, emotional, pivotal moment in the movie.
In the movie, it's beautiful. You got the kid.
All right, I kind of feel like he saved it especially for that moment, because it really.
Well, he did. I mean, you know, James was, you know, if we do this, we can only do it once, you know. So, I mean, James is, you know, he's probably the most intuitive, you know, the most musically intuitive director I've ever worked with. You know, I've said this before, but he is. So, you know, you just learn to trust him with music. You know, if he says something's working, you just move on, and if it's not, then you listen. You know, so. But yeah, I think it was saved for the right moment. And the way, you know, I won't even reveal anything here, but that whole shot, and it's all one shot, that as well, and you see the flag and you're just like, oh, you know, it's a bit of movie magic, that. But yeah, it wasn't meant. It was just an accident, to be honest.
Oh, yeah, I was with a friend this morning. He hadn't seen it yet, and I knew that moment was coming. And I just sat up in my chair, and he looked at me like, "Oh, something's gonna happen, isn't it?" And then it was like, oh, "It's John." I was like, "Yeah, it is."
It wasn't even a good take. I think it was like the first or second take. You know,
He's playing it down. now, Nick. It's so
I'm
hardcore.
serious. If I'd known what it was going to be, and it was going to be like the biggest regular Warners or DC have ever done, I would have recorded it again, you know. So if you listen, it's kind of a bit just jammy, you know. But maybe that's part of it, you know. It wasn't too perfect. It was just me just vibing off the John Williams theme.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, because in a way, if there was a rawness to that guitar performance, that sort of fits with this depiction of Superman, who's fallible, isn't he? He is fallible and he is more mercurial. So maybe that music works for
Maybe
this
I
bit.
never thought of it that way, Sean. But yeah, that's a good point. You know, because he is. I mean, one of the the best things about this new story is, you know, how human he is.
Yeah.
The fact that, you know, yeah, his humanity is what makes him so endearing. I think, you know, and makes him believable too.
Mm.
You know, so yeah, maybe that's part of why the sloppy jammy guitar worked. Who knows?
Sure.
There's a lot is made about the John Williams theme, about how the stanzas are alleged to spell out Superman like that, which it does actually sound like that when you hear it. I think Richard Donner pointed that out during the recording sessions for the original film. It's just, I mean, was there any expectation that you would play around with that? I mean, I'm not even, if it's three stanzas, I'm not even sure if that's possible, but did that play into the conversation at all around the music?
No, we didn't. I mean, we were just very, you know, because you've always got to find the line where you can feel, you know, where you don't want to push it too much, you know, and you don't want it to be feel forced, you know. And the fact that we were even, you know, having the boldness to go back to the original, well, you know, the original score and take this motif, that felt enough of a gift to us, you know. That we would take that and then we would just do our own thing with it. You know, we didn't want to push it any further, really.
Also want to ask you about the love thing, because you had the stuff going on with Lois and Clark's great, man. That's yours, right? Tell us about the kind of genesis of the love theme.
Well, it was funny because I did two versions for that, and again, that was very early on. It was written from the script, because the way, you know, we talked about how James works. You know, he loves to have music on set. You know, sometimes to play to the actors. You know, not music, but the themes. You know, the demos from the film. He likes to have while they're shooting, which is why I always write from the script before he starts shooting. Sometimes you'll have the music in his earpiece to help, you know, sort of give him a better sense of the speed of what's going on and stuff. So he, you know, he works with music. You know, he actually has music, and when he has demos from the score that he knows that he's approved and it's going to be recorded when it's all cut, then, you know, I think it's part of his creative process. You know, I think to him, music is just a constant part of the creative stuff. It's not just something you think about at the end. So he was keen for me to do the love, you know, start writing some ideas for the love theme very early on. I think it might have been the second or third thing I did. And it's funny because, you know, I did what I thought was a big, grand, cinematic, you know, very sort of golden era of film music, big, sweeping, huge thing. And I was so convinced that it was the one, that the other idea I had, which was this kind of, you know, cute little filtered guitar in the style of, I guess, you know, Sia Rose or something like that. I didn't really spend much time on it because I thought, you know, I think this is cool, but, you know, the big sweeping one is clearly going to be the one he goes for. But when he rang me back, I was actually on the way. I was at an airport and I was on the way to, I forget where I was going, but I was just about to get on a plane. And he was raving about the theme. And I thought he was talking about the big orchestral one. And I went, hang on, there's no guitar. And I went, oh, he means the other one, you know. And I went, and I couldn't understand. I was kind of disappointed because I was so proud of this big, sweeping, you know, like, you know, proper composer theme, you know. Then I realized he was talking about the cool little, you know, sort of guitar version. But then when I got back and went, actually, yeah, I can see what there's something kind of cool and minimal and modern about it. So then, you know, when I got back to the studio, I ended up doing a few more versions for him. And that's, you know, that became, in fact, it's a shame really, because the big scene at the end, the beautiful, you know, the walking on air thing, again, I'll try not to give the game away this time. That scene used to be twice as long, and I loved it because it just then the theme went into like all these drums and bass and everything just kicked in, you know. And I loved it. It was great. It got really kind of post rock there and Mogwai, you know. It got very Mogwai, but there was like a 6-minute version or something. So I think all we hear in the movie is like the first 2 minutes or something. But I like the theme now. I think it works really well.
Sean.
I suppose what you've said there highlights it's the difference between, well, I suppose there's good music and then there's good music for the film, right? They're not necessarily the same thing. It depends what's best serving the story.
It's really the same thing, yeah.
Yeah. Have there has that happened? Does that happen often for you? Like where you put your heart and soul into a piece of music for a given film and then there's another one that sneaks up from the side that ends up stealing the show?
I'd say about half the time I write anything on.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm serious. It's about half the time because usually I'll do like 3 or even 4 demos for something, and not so much with James because James tends to kind of go with the cooler versions, and so did Danny. Danny Boyle was good too. I used to do this thing where I'd go, one for them and one for me, where I do something, when I was less kind of secure in the job, I used to go, oh, well, I better give them what they want or I'll be fired, but I'll do what I think it should be and give them that as an option, so, but with, directors like, James and Danny Boyle, they tend to go with the less obvious one and they tend to go with the cooler stuff, so, but yeah, a lot of the time you sort of, you come off the phone of a director loving something and you're like, crap, why didn't he go with the other one, But, you get used to that. I think every composer has that, really.
So I want to talk about, because this is obviously, there are 2 of you on the score, and I just want to, if I may, ask about kind of how that evolved into a two-hander, and how did it work? Did you work together? Did you kind of go so far and David took over? How did all that work?
It was, I mean, these movies are just, it's like doing 3 movies at the same time. Not just the length of the score, but the percentage of the film that has score in these, typically in a superhero movie. And then you've got the whole layers and and the amount of version. It's like somebody said it, you're basically doing 3 movies back to back when you do film, but like it feels like you're doing 5 at the same time, So, it was just getting bigger and bigger and Dave came on when they were cutting. And Dave's a great guy and he's a great composer and he's got his own skill set and stuff. So, in fact, Dave did most of the John Williams arrangements once we were into the movie. He took some of the things I did and he reworked them, and it worked out. But the sad thing was we didn't get to sit in the room together and do stuff. That would have been fun, because me, James, and Dave we're all in different places, and the point that Dave came on, it was ramping up, so. We didn't get to sit there and jam and do the John and Paul thing with a few beers, which is a shame. But there's a lot of cues where, the genuine collaborations and we just didn't do it in the room together. But it worked out. I mean, it works and the movie works great. So, it's all cool.
Mm-hmm. I think Dave said the closest thing you guys had to a collab was Metropolis. I think there was a track called Metropolis.
Yeah, that was a very black and white one. That was a cool one because basically I had I'd written this kind of acousticy Radiohead style kind of groove, for the end, and it was really, it was very kind of minimal, really, but it had been in the movie forever, and it wasn't your typical sort of epilogue end of movie track, but it kind of worked and it had just been in there and James loved it. And then James must have asked Dave to do this, just incorporated a load of strings and just made it feel more fitting to that whole beautiful ending to the film, so that was just a, here you go, you do the orchestra, you do, and it worked out great. Now I can't imagine it without it, it just gives it a lot of, gives a lot of depth to the end musically. So, I loved what he did on that.
Sean.
There's obviously there's a lot of talk about musical treatment of Superman, but you do have the character of Lex Luthor, brilliantly played by Nicholas Hoult, who really reimagines him as this really sneering, sadistic character. He's great. How did that work?
Guy in the world as well. I saw him at the premiere the other night. He's like the nicest guy you've ever met.
Yeah. What is it about nice actors that play horrible characters? They do it really well.
I know. But but yeah, no, Lex was a brilliant character to write for. I mean, even from the script, even without Nick's fantastic performance, the whole, it's a very complex, beautifully drawn character from the script. He's got this sense of grandiose and grandeur and megalomania, but he's also incredibly, again, the same thing. He's also very human. He's kind of funny and he's sarcastic and he's, he gets, irritated by his girlfriend and, those kind of characters are beautiful to write for because, it's just a bigger well. It's not like a cartoon character of this is the bad guy. And he was, such an interesting character in that he kind of, openly admitted that, he openly admitted his jealousy and his arrogance that he compared himself to Einstein and Newton and and I had this funny conversation with James once where just a Zoom and he was talking me through the character and then he's explaining this beautiful thing he'd just written about how Lex is comparing himself to Newton and Einstein and James goes, well, he's actually got a point, because he kind of is the smartest guy in the world and you've got to you kind of side with him, so but that's the writer's perspective where it's natural to go, well, this is a bad guy, but why is he a bad guy? And I kind of get some of that, it's that it's the Thanos argument, maybe Thanos wasn't all bad because he was helping, so he was a great character to work with and but I wanted to play with that too. I wrote the theme, the big, I forget, I can't even hum it, but the big kind of epic Nina Rota type thing. But my daughter Molly co-wrote the first Time You Hear That. I think it's
nice.
It's called. She put all this trip hop stuff on there and all these kind of echoey synths and stuff, and I went, oh, what? This is perfect because even though he's got this grandiosity and he's this big epic character, he's also like really cool and high tech, and he's got this edginess to him as well, and he kind of looks great. So mixing the big epics, the big dark epic stuff with this kind of cool, laconic, tricky-esque trip hop little groove with these little synths coming out, it just worked, So yeah, I mean, he was probably my favorite character to write for. Actually,
I was just going to ask. Actually, is it more fun to write for villains than it is for heroes?
God, yeah, villains are way more interesting. It's there's always more complexities with villains, and I mean, musically as well. You've just got like cooler crayons to draw with. Get into like the dirty colored stuff and you can every composer will tell you that it's way more fun to write thematic stuff for villains. Everyone would tell you that.
I like the idea that a theme in this film is punk rock. Now that's something that was already in the material when it came to you, because there's a part of me that really wants to believe you had some influence over that, because you are so
I would love to say I would love to say
this was made for you.
I would love to say I did. No, I mean, well, James, no, that was all in the script. I mean, everything you see was in the script. The music, the songs, everything. I know, but I mean, James was in a punk band. He was I forget what they were called, but he was in a punk band. He was the singer, you know, and I was in a punk band. So that was one of the better conversations we had, you know, where we were like, you know, just reliving our past, the glory days of being in a punk band, you know. So we had that in common. Now all that punk stuff was all in the script. I had nothing to do with that.
Yeah, being a good guy is pretty punk rock. I love that as a.
Well,
as a-
isn't that what it's, you know, I
Yeah.
remember reading that the first time and I'm like, oh yeah, I like that. There's got to be, you know. And if you notice in the film, as soon as he says that, I'd leave the beat for the audience to sing, and then the theme comes back in, you know. So, you know, I knew where the music was going to come in when I read that on the script. I didn't know what the music was going to be, but as soon as I read that, I went, okay, beat, and I'll just bring in the music right there, and it'll be beautiful, you know.
I think I don't remember if it was the last time you were on with us, John. Maybe talking about Guardians 3. You mentioned those punk rock days, and you said there was a purity of intent and there was a joyousness about that, like that there was like less expectation around music, and it was just like unbridled creativity. Like when you were doing that, it always stuck with me. That did. I thought that was. I'm pretty sure that was when you were last on with us. But like,
Yeah.
you look back on that fondly? Do you?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I look back on it very funny, but I also look back on it as being a turning point for me too. You know, in terms of how, you know, every composer has, well, everyone has a different, you know, their own relationship to music. You know, and I think what punk did for me was basically tell me that it's not just about the music, you know. It's not the written notes, it's not the structure, it's as much about the attitude and the emotion, and you know that stuck with me, that, you know. And I think it gave me the courage to kind of do things that were just not expected. And you know, if your gut was feeling good, then just do, you know, like the end of 28 Days Later, or whatever, where you just go, you know what, I don't care. I don't care that it's wrong. It's doing something to me head. I'm just going to do it anyway and see how it goes. So I think, you know, the whole punk thing, where it's exactly what you just said, Sean, you know, when there's no expectations, a lot of the weight comes off you, you know, and you tend to be more natural and more yourself. And that's, for me, that's what punk was about. You know, nothing was expected. It was just an angry scream into the ether, you know. A lot of it was, you know, it was just an outpouring of emotion. And you know, not having had a musical education, you know, having that little bit of attitude or anger, I guess, as well, you know, that kind of compensated a lot for me. It just made me think, you know, fuck it, just do it, you know. And I think that's been one of my mantras, and it's helped me a lot, you know. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't just a very inspiring time for me. It was actually quite a game changer for me, you know.
I like that. That might have to be a tattoo. Okay, let's do it. We asked the question before. We did this with Guardians, so I think it'd be cool if we did this with Superman as well, because there's a lot of characters in this movie, so we can do this. So, John, character you most liken yourself to from the new Superman film?
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah.
Superman edition.
I think the character I would most liken myself to, well, I definitely don't feel like Superman. Okay, I would like to say Lex Luthor, but I'm probably more like, I think I'm probably more like the Green Lantern, really.
Guy Gardner.
Funny, bit of an asshole, and kind of means well, but like screws a lot of things up. Yeah, definitely I think I most relate to Guy Gardner, you know.
He draws a crowd though in the film. He does draw a crowd.
He's
So
brilliant. I mean, you know, he's so funny, you know.
yeah,
And again, he's another one of the sweetest guys you'd ever meet as well. Very softly spoken, very, you know, it's funny these actors. Maybe they're just acting. Maybe they're not like that in real life, you know. But yeah, he's a super nice guy.
oh, it's always great when Nathan Fillion turns up in something. I was like, yes,
Yeah, he's got a lot of charm, and he, you know.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And you have a better haircut, John, as well, which works out better.
I know. The minute I saw that, I was like, no, they can't do that.
Yeah, they can't do that to it.
Oh my God. And then I saw some of the rushes and I'm like,
Yeah.
he actually put the bowl cut on him. You know?
Yeah, Nathan is going to have to go through the next few months looking like that.
The funny thing is, when you meet him, he's actually a very good looking guy, you know? But then you put that wig on him and he just looks like an idiot, you know? I think James did that on purpose. He's very good friends with James. James has known him for like 30 years or so. James probably just did it to wind him up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just looked at it and thought he looks like he's escaped from like the Beach Boys or the 60s or something like that. Yeah, he just
Slither, isn't he? He was in like one of the first films of James's that I saw, which I think was Slither.
Oh yeah,
He
yes.
was the cop in Slither, wasn't he?
Yeah.
God, what a movie that was.
Oh yeah. Stomach turning.
Bonkers,
That was what
yeah.
turned me on to James's films, and then I went back and I was looking for all this Troma stuff and everything. I was like, yeah, that was the movie that for me was like, oh, who's this guy?
That was the first James Gunn film I saw, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We familiar with him, John, from like the Troma, from all the Troma.
No,
material.
that's what I mean. I went back then after that. So,
Yeah, and then, you know,
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
yeah, I saw some. Yeah, I went back a bit too, but for me, that was the first. Yeah, that was the first James movie I watched. It was Slither.
It got a lot of press at the time. It was a big horror comedy. I don't know if we hadn't had many horror comedies for a while up to when that came out, but that was a big deal. So
It
there
was a big deal because again, it's it just reset the genre a little bit, And there's always that fine line where you're thinking, are they serious with this, or is that supposed to be funny?
yeah, with the
That's
big
very
bloated
James.
body slide.
No, but that's very James, It's like, is it meant to be funny? Am I okay to laugh here? But yeah, he knows how to pitch that pretty well,
yeah, he does. He does. Sean, final question from you, please, sir.
Oh yeah, it's always really difficult to, because we've spoken about a lot, John. We've spoken about your work. We've spoken about the legacy of John Williams. Like, I mean, if you could sum up the musical ethos of Superman in one word, like what would it be?
One word. God, that's so difficult. I could do it with two, but let me think.
It's all right. We can allow you to if you.
Yeah, I mean, how do you sum up anything in one word?
Yeah.
It's the first word, fucking. Fucking epic.
With me, usually, yeah. I would say, I mean, so many words come to mind. I mean, it's very comic book. I mean, that's one of the things is it's hopeful. I think if I had to have one word, I would say it's hopeful.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah. I like that. And just finally, I suppose now this is when we spoke at the beginning, I think you're very much resting at the moment after that. That's a huge and undeservedly so, sir, because I think you guys deserve all the rest. The movie's out now at the time of us recording this with you, and it's doing so well and it's just great. But after a rest, what happens next?
A longer rest. Well, Molly, my daughter, will be going to Northeastern in about 6 weeks. So she'll be living in New York, and that's going to be tough. So I'm just gonna spend as much time with her before the empty nest happens. you know, we're in the middle of, she's recording some tracks now, some new stuff. So I've been recording her. So I'm still busy, but it's a very different type of work. So I'm going to be working with her. And then when she moves to New York, I'll probably secretly fly there and put a beard on and just make sure she gets, you know, home okay, and make sure she's not drinking too much and things like that. So I'll probably, I mean, once she's there, I'll probably just, you know, chill out a little bit and spend some time with Charlotte and just decompress, you know. And then I don't want to read any scripts or anything for the moment. I just want to like come down a little bit from her, or just get me energy back, you know.
Is your daughter, is she going to be following like her musical passion? Is that what she's going to be doing?
Yeah, my son Jude is doing business, you know, so he'll be, thank God there'll be one of us in the family that knows something about business. He's at, you know, so he's at UConn in Connecticut, doing business, and Molly will be doing music production at Northeastern. They've got a new building.
Yeah.
In New
And
but-
never the twain shall meet, right? Music and business.
But like they're both going to be on the East Coast, so there's going to be a lot of East Coast trips, I think, in the next few years. But yeah, she wants to do music, and she's light years ahead of where I was at her age, you know. So I'm just letting her go with it. So, but yeah, they're both doing great. Both kids are doing great.
Well, we are looking forward to our Molly Murphy interview eventually. That time will come.
Yeah.
John, it's always a great pleasure, mate, to speak to you, and it's been great.
Lovely to speak to you guys too. It's like the first name I look for. Well, I you know, even Thomas and Chandler know now this. Like, you're cool with the guy. I mean, yeah, of course, yeah. You know, you're like the first on the team sheet. You know, so
Bless you. Thank
it's
you.
always one of the interviews I look forward to.
Well, we look forward to it too, and it's been great to share your experiences on working on, I think, the biggest film so far this summer, certainly. Go and see it. It's in cinemas and theatres around the world right now. It's Superman. The score by our very own John Murphy and David Fleming is incredible. Go and get it now from All Digital. There's a vinyl coming as well. Look out for that. John, thank you so much. Enjoy your rest. Richly deserved. And we'll catch up again soon, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you both. That was great. Thank you.
You have a dog?